Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second week of the course. I want to do one or two videos about the two Board of Ethical Review cases that we'll be reading for this week. But I found in the past few years and that there's a simple distinction, ethical distinction or moral distinction here, which I think everyone of you understands. So it may be superfluous to point it out, but it's one that is, I think, of vital importance in reading these BER cases, so that it's worth just dwelling on. Again, I think it's something that every one of you, whether you have consciously articulated it to yourself or not, understands, and that's the distinction between something being morally obligatory and something being morally permissible. So often in these cases, that distinction is important. Things which are morally obligatory are things that we must do, that we have to do in order to be ethical. Now, of course, you can do whatever you want, man, right? But if we presume that every one of us has an interest in being ethical, in being morally correct, then things which are morally obligatory are things which are mandatory. Right? You just have to do them. And a good word that goes along with that is having a duty or an obligation. They're things that we have to do, so that not doing them, say not doing anything, would actually be unethical. So things which are morally obligatory are things that we have a duty to do, or perhaps a duty not to do, right? That can be distinguished from things which are morally permissible. Things which are morally permissible, a much wider range of things, right? Merely says if we say that something is morally permissible, we say that it's ethical to do it. Or you could say, maybe more helpfully, that it's not unethical to do it. Maybe that's better, actually. That is, if something's morally permissible, we're saying that doing it is okay, that it's not unethical to do it. And this would, of course, cover, a wide range of things. Like it's morally permissible to go to Wawa and get a hoagie, all things being equal. It's morally permissible to look out the window to see what the weather's like, right? In BER cases, more pointedly, it's morally permissible in some cases to blow the whistle, to inform a public authority that your employer or client is doing something which is hazardous to the health of the public, right? And that's really that context of the first canon, protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public is often the context for this, the relevance of this distinction. Oftentimes, when it comes to whistleblowing or doing something, an engineer doing something about something that he or she is concerned about, there is a big distinction between saying, well, it's morally permissible, let's say, for an engineer to take his or her case to a public authority or the media or a professional organization. And to say it's morally permissible is to say that the engineer can do it if they want, that there would be nothing wrong with them doing it. But that is not going as far as to say that something is, of course, not going as far as to say that something's morally obligatory. In some cases, blowing the whistle, which basically means going over someone's head, going outside the organization, whether it's a governmental organization you work for, or whether it is a business that you work for, or it's a client you're working for. In some cases, it's morally obligatory, says the Board of Ethical Review, to blow the whistle. That would be when you have a duty or obligation to. So Again, I know this is a very simple distinction that is clear, but I think that pointing it out or keeping it in mind is a helpful thing in reading these cases. That is, that reminding us that, well, things which are morally permissible were things that I can do if I want, right? If it's merely morally permissible. But that's not saying that I have an obligation to do it. Right? I have the option of doing it. But for something to be obligatory, it would be something that I would have to do, that I would have a duty to do. So I think that, again, it's a fairly obvious distinction, but I think it's a good one to keep in mind.